welcome to episode 6 of Sim Sundays podcast presented by Grid Finder. Hey, I'm back finally after a couple episodes away. Gracefully, Tom handled all the specials and all the non-live shows that we've been doing. So if you haven't seen those, go check them out. They're on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and finally on Google Podcasts. Tom, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, and it's good that you're back. I feel like I've been stealing the limelight a little bit. I've been traveling around the country doing some pretty cool podcasts, talking to some pretty cool people. We know the track racer, Matt Stent. We've had his episode, and then we had the D-Box episode with Stefan Vidal, which was really interesting. And I recorded a podcast on Tuesday. I'm not going to give it away, but in an actual Formula One factory. So
yeah, I'm a little jealous about that one. You posted some pictures, and I'm like, come on, man, don't be showing me that stuff.
I couldn't help it. I physically couldn't restrain myself from posting those pictures. However, we're not here to talk about what we've already talked about in the past. We're here today with Lawrence, sim racing streamer extraordinaire. And do you know what? Do you know why I've stumbled? The reason I've stumbled is because I said I was going to say something to you, Lawrence, before the podcast. And it was something about a potato, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was.
Whatever,
so welcome.
Whatever you say, I've heard worse. It's fine.
I mean, okay, first of all, welcome to the podcast. You G'd me up. I checked before that I was going to say this potato thing. It was something to do with your Discord. It was all above board. It was going to be very funny. And Chris, don't look at me like that. I've screwed it up. I'm very sorry.
I honestly thought you paused because you forgot completely how to pronounce his last name. Because we were talking about it earlier, and I had to ask him, of course, because I skimmed through a bunch of his YouTube videos, which there's a lot of them on there to skim through, and I noticed he never mentions his last name. So I was like, wait, Lawrence, how do you pronounce your last name? So for everyone in the audience, Lawrence, how do you pronounce your last name correctly?
Potato.
Oh,
no, Dusaswa. It's Dusaswa.
Dusaswa.
Yeah.
So okay, we've stumbled through our intro to this podcast in classic Sim Sundays fashion. So I want to get us on track very quickly, right? So before we do all these episodes, we speak to the people that are going to come on, and we ask them a few questions about what we're going to cover, and obviously we do our own research. Now, Lawrence sent us some information about him, and the first thing he told us has really stuck out to me. He said, I've been sim racing for 25 years. Now, I'm 29 years old. Lawrence, how the hell have you been sim racing for 25 years?
So, and that's with force feedback, right? So I was actually sim racing before that. My very first sim was around 1991, I think. I was born in 85. I was probably 6 years old. And there was a game. So my dad had a BBC Master System. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. There was a game on it called E-Type, and you drove a Jaguar E-Type. It was one of those kind of 2D weaving left and right between traffic. But there was a difficult mode in which you had to control your manual gears. So you had C was clutch, and while you were pressing the clutch, you had to press, I think it was A for gear up, all while using the arrows for acceleration and left and right. And if you didn't press the clutch properly, it would make a little like crunching sound of the gearbox and all that. I was like, oh my God, this is so realistic. So that's my first kind of intro to real simulation, right? But again, that was just on the keyboard. My first force feedback steering wheel was a Microsoft Sidewinder steering wheel in around 1997, 98. And that's when I first started, I was already doing stuff on consoles and stuff like that. But that's when I really got into Colin McRae Rally, even stuff like Need for Speed, Hot Pursuit, Free. That was kind of and there was Need for Speed Porsche Challenge as well, which was quite heavy on the sim side. It was a bit of a flop as a game because it was so difficult. It was very simulation heavy. NASCAR was another like really huge one, which, you know, if it wasn't for the diehard fans who loved NASCAR, that would have been an absolute failure as well because it was so difficult. There was a very realistic damage model and all that kind of stuff. So yes, it's a long time. So yeah,
I remember the days of playing Need for Speed on a keyboard, and just the turning was the worst because you're just repeatedly tapping the arrow key so you don't just go off into the side of the road. It was the worst experience. I can't even
Yeah.
remember like the first time I ever experienced analog or a steering wheel or anything like that. And I mean, just the way that you had to drive, even with the accelerator, like you couldn't feather it through a corner. You couldn't do anything except for on, off, on, off.
Yeah.
And it was just very difficult to drive back in those days. But
Yeah,
for
so
some reason, we still fell in love with it.
yeah, I was lucky with my proper, steering wheel. I felt like an absolute boss because the game was easy. With the steering
Right.
wheel, I could just, you could take the corners at ridiculously high speeds and stuff like that. But Need for Speed Hot Pursuit was one of the great ones because that opened my eyes to modding. People made
Oh.
mods, so you could drive like, Mario Karts in this game. You had in-car views, and if the in-car view wasn't nice, you could download a new one, which was, it was still only like a 2D image, but it looked nicer and stuff.
Right.
It was really, it was really cool. That really captured my imagination.
I remember in Need for Speed 1 on the PC with a keyboard, just like we were talking about, there were a couple of mods. There was like this super speedy car that had it had rocket booster looking things on the back, but they didn't do anything. You just went really fast. And then there was a mod for the track where just like in the middle of a straight, there was just this gigantic jump. And I remember as a kid just repeatedly playing that level to just like go as far as I can and see like what my furthest mark, like a long distance jump was. And I just repeated that endlessly forever. But, in those days of games, there's like a hard limit to where you're never going to get any farther. That's as far as you're going to get. You can't do anything different. That's what you got. And I'd still be like, no, I think I can get farther. What if I hit it at this angle? I think I can go even farther.
I mean, that's what we do as sim racers, right? Like you could spend 2 or 3 hours getting a good lap in. Then you spend another 2 or 3 hours trying to find a tenth of a second.
Yeah.
Because it's so repetitive, and those who aren't, that way inclined, those who don't see the benefit of getting that tenth or how huge that is, there's no way they're ever going to understand it. It's just because you're doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, which that per definition, that's insanity, right? Same thing, expecting different results. But after an hour, 2 hours, or whatever, or even you go to bed, you're raging with yourself, and the next morning, your first lap, you absolutely crush your time. It's like you feel like you were in your sleep, learning it,
like learning the laps in your sleep,
and that appeals to us, right? But we have to understand that we're wired differently. We're not the same.
I was telling Tom because the track today is just too long for me to be able to memorize the turns. And I was saying, most of the time I'm kind of a time trial champion, if you will. And I only get good at the tracks because of pure memorization. In this track, I'm just like, I can't memorize enough of this to become good at this, at driving this. So I totally understand where you're coming from, because I'll sit there for 3 hours a night and then just have like a movie on my iPad or something like that and just repeatedly run laps on one track because I have a race on Friday. And then all of a sudden, like you said, the next day you're like, why did I spend 3 hours on that track when I threw one lap and it was my record lap just now?
Yeah.
And it's been 10 minutes.
It makes no sense, but we love
fabulous.
it.
I feel like I went through. I'm listening to this, and a lot of this stuff is before my time, which is not something I get to say very often. I feel in the places that I work and the people that I'm around, I tend to be kind of one of the older generation. But actually, here is not the case, because my first sim racing experience was probably TOCA 2, and I have a really distinct memory of a cousin of mine coming over, and he was a lot older, and I was playing TOCA 2, and I span out at, say, the second corner, the third corner of lap one. So I did what any 8-year-old kid would do. I turned around and I drove the track backwards and I smashed into all the cars because that was so much more fun. It has taken, it took a good 15 years before I could start to appreciate the beauty of the tenths.
That gives me nightmares of the race that we ran on Red Bull Ring, where we just had the person taking us out every corner on repeat the entire race. Yeah. And then it became kind of a sport. You're like, oh, here he is again. I got to dodge him.
That sounds very familiar. I think I might have been watching that. I've seen that happen before.
It makes me want to play Wreckfest a little bit, which I did notice on your channel you do play, Lawrence.
Yeah.
Just because sometimes you just want to throw someone into a spin. Sometimes you want to be that guy that crashes all over. And in that game, that's the point. Like, that's fine.
So doing Wreckfest was great, especially in the early days of building a community. It was amazing because like I'd be streaming and literally every single person who watched my stream would be in Wreckfest with me. So the stream would be like a big fat 0 viewers, and you know we would have crazy amounts of fun. And it would a couple of hours later, you know, stream would be over, no viewers. I didn't even care, right? Then it got to a stage. Then it got to a stage where you know there'd be 20 people inside in Wreckfest, and there might be 20 people watching. Now, all of a sudden, the dynamic is completely different because the 20 people who are in Wreckfest with you, they know there are 20 people watching. So what did? They wreck Lawrence.
Yeah.
So streaming Wreckfest as a streamer is like no fun at all because
I can imagine that
you can't get around a single corner.
It'd be just like if you watch any, you know, Call of Duty or any, you know, battle royale game streamers where the people that are watching your stream are also finding you because they know where you are in the map. So you're always in this constant state of, I have to battle harder than everyone else in this whole entire server. That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Wreckfest reminds me, I don't know why, it's completely different, but I think of Twisted Metal when I think of Wreckfest for some reason. I'm like, just put rocket launchers on the cars and then you have Twisted Metal, you know?
That sounds like fun.
That was like the original Battle Royale.
Yeah.
Twisted Metal 2 World Tour was amazing.
It realistically was the first Battle Royale.
Loved it.
I mean, I played that game quite a bit when I was a kid, and then they remastered it recently. Not recently. I think it was on PS3 or maybe even 4. And I tried it, and I was like, why did I like this game?
Yeah.
It just didn't hold my attention anymore. I don't know why.
Yeah.
What was that PlayStation? I want to say PlayStation 2 game where the whole point was that there'd be a scenario, right? So there'd be like a junction or a roundabout. There'd be some buses. There was always a lorry with lots of logs on it, and then there'd be like dumper trucks and stuff. And then you had to drive usually down a hill. Yeah. You'd hit a jump that was just there on the road because it's there, and then you'd get points for the amount of like destruction that you would cause in that was it called Burnout?
Yeah, Burnout.
It was Burnout. Yeah, you're supposed to get super close to crashes, or even like you get bonus points for some crashes. One of the people in chat said Carmageddon. That's another one where like you take and crash things for points. But I think what you're talking about, I think it is Burnout.
I think it's Burnout, and
it was Burnout.
I always think of that whenever I go into like an Assetto Corsa unranked lobby in like the Tartus. And it's like turn 1 at Monza, and I get smashed. I'm like, oh, Burnout 2, turn 1 Monza.
Like, here you go again.
Yeah.
My strategy on turn 1 on any track is always just to kind of like let them go. I'm like, I'll wait, and then I'll go through this turn.
Like the Dave Cam approach. If you've ever seen Dave Cam on iRacing, he will often start from the pit lane and still get up onto like a podium position, which is an inspiring technique, and obviously it's great to watch because you get to watch him do like all the overtakes and stuff. And like that first half a lap, he's just like driving through this like apocalyptic racetrack with just wrecks of cars, like on either side, like barriers in flames, and he just drives through.
And then you go and try to do it yourself, and you just can't catch the other cars. Like, what's that about?
Exactly. You completely don't appreciate the fact that he's now come out like with freezing cold tires, and like you go out and you spin around, and you're just the same. You just join the apocalypse.
Yeah, I did a turn 1 survival guide. If you type in turn 1 survival guide on YouTube, you'll find, and it doesn't suggest starting at the back or whatever, because eventually, you know, that's going to get old as well, especially if you can't make it all the way to the front.
Right.
And eventually you're going to end up beside the people who might take you out anyway. So it kind of discusses techniques of how to, if they're going to do something stupid, that they do it in such a way that it can't affect you even if they mess it up. So
right. I thought for a second there you were going to say the turn 1 guide, essentially, you have to qualify in pole position, get an incredible start, and then just don't let anybody catch up with you. That's the key.
That would work.
Not getting wrecked in turn 1.
That'll work.
I mean, it's not wrong.
I don't think most of us can do that, though, unfortunately. Especially not me. You'll notice through our race today that I'm not exactly what would be called a even intermediate sim racer. I've kind of filled my sim racing career with like arcade style games, and then I only time trial on like ACC and the real serious games because I'm like too afraid to go up against the, as they call online, aliens that are just amazing. And like when I get the blue flag, I'm looking in my rearview mirror going, I'm going to mess something up. I don't know. They're going by me, but I'm going to clip them somehow. I'm going to throw them into a wall, get banned from the server.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous.
Community racing is the answer to that.
Yeah, I was actually, when you first started sim racing with a bunch of people and maybe even more specifically like with your community, how did you get over like the nervousness of messing someone else up? Because I mean, I know a lot of sim racers actually go through that, like, I want to race, I want to participate in these leagues, which are all listed on Grid Finder, by the way.
Yeah.
I want to compete in these leagues, but I'm just so nervous to go around turn one, as we've been talking about, or even just to generally try to pass someone. How did you get over that?
Yeah. So like and these are kind of reasons why I guess my channel started in the first place, right? I'm a very kind of I try to come up with little things that help me remember things so that basically the less I have to think about, the more likely I am to be good at something. And it's kind of similar with that. That's where that whole turn one survival guide came from as well. I've got guides on, how people, how to deal with blue flags or how to defend properly, stuff like that. Because with a mindset exactly like you described, in general, your mindset is anything can go wrong. Absolutely anything can go wrong. But the fact is that maybe 3 or 4 things could go wrong out of the, so many adjustments, everything that you're doing. Even if you are a lot slower than the car behind you, it's still difficult because you always hear people saying, well, this car is holding me up. Yeah. Well, why don't you just pass them out if they're,
if they're
it's
that
like
slow.
Yeah, exactly. So you can be a lot slower than someone.
To you.
And as long as you're just doing your qualifying line, and the main thing is as long as you're being predictable, that's the number one thing, right? If you're predictable, then you're never going to get in anyone's way. If you try to do someone a favor, like in the middle of a corner, you know what? I'm going to brake and pull to the left here. That's the exact moment that they're going to be trying to pass you on the left.
Right.
So just be predictable and they will get past you. Even if you're slower and even if you impede their speed somehow, there are actually very few things and that all comes with experience. And eventually when you're very experienced, it's quite easy to let people pass. It's easier to let people pass on a straight than in a corner. So the best thing you can do while you're in a corner is just take that corner as fast as you can the way you normally would. And then that car caught up to you in the first place. They're going to be able to pass you, especially on the straight.
It's obvious that you're not going to stay in front of them at this point.
Exactly. So all right. And I guess my point is, with the whole setting up a community and stuff like that, I started doing like little videos and stuff like that because people were often asking me these questions, especially newer drivers and stuff. And I tried to help them because I organized leagues and stuff. And I recorded these little videos and I was sending them links. And they were like, hey, can I share this with my other community? I was like, yeah, no problem. And eventually I just started making the videos public because, and that was like, 3 years ago almost. Nice. And that's where the channel actually started. I had no real intention of reviewing hardware at the start, but it just...
Okay. So the community came before the channel?
Yeah.
So you were pushed into making a channel like, hey, I like your content. Keep posting.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily this community. So my community now is called the Potato Nation. It wasn't that community as such. There was another community that I was one of the founding members of called Lega Corsa. It was an AC league, and I did that for several years, and I was one of the admins, even while I had the channel running and stuff like that. But that's kind of where it started, and then the channel grew kind of in its own direction, so I set up a different community.
Nice. So when you first started this, were you planning on doing more live content, or was it on-demand style YouTube stuff? I mean, it sounds like you kind of were pushed in a direction with your community giving you demand, but when did you finally go, I'm going to be a streamer, or I'm going to be a YouTube on-demand type creator?
Yeah, I didn't really know. So I kind of did it kind of spoofing right at the start. I was like, I'm doing all this sim racing anyway. I'm just going to record some stuff and I'm going to put it out there and I'll see what happens. My initial goal was to, try and monetize my channel and get earn €1 from YouTube and understand the algorithm, all that nonsense, right? And so I just did a load of random stuff, but it gained some traction with certain, because like there was the Irish community and stuff like that, and even still there are very few people in Ireland creating sim racing content. So within Ireland, a lot of people refer to me as that Irish sim racer, that Irish YouTuber. It kind of, I didn't start streaming until the channel was, I'd say, about 8 or 9 months old. It was only at that stage that I said, look, I'm doing these races anyway. What I was doing before that point was I was recording the races, cutting out all the crap parts where I was really bad, and putting up highlights, and people were like, oh yeah, the highlights are great and stuff. But I mean, I would finish a race at like 10 p.m. and I would be editing the highlights till 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. just trying to get, that 15-minute video. And after a while I was like, you know what, if they want to watch, they're going to have to take the good with the bad. And I think that's very much a thing when it comes to streaming. And a lot of people, it turns out a lot of people love that journey. A lot of people who've been there throughout my, deepest moments when, I was just like in a heap on my stream saying, why am I doing this? Pretty much my facial expressions were saying it. They've experienced me winning championships. They've experienced me, celebrating to the point where I woke my kids who were asleep upstairs, So all those highs and lows really make kind of part of the journey. But like part of the reason I think that the channel has done okay is because even the times that I stream at, I was already driving at those times. I don't go out of my way to stream. So if at some stage, like if I start up the stream and for some reason it doesn't broadcast to any of my channels or anything like that, I'm still doing that race. The exact same thing is still going to happen. Okay, I'm not going to be talking to myself while it happens. I have turned on record and uploaded the video afterwards for those who are interested. But you kind of, in the same way, when you stream, it doesn't matter, and we kind of alluded to this before the stream started. It doesn't matter if there are 0 people watching or 1,000 people watching. If that number affects how, what you're streaming and how you act on stream, then you're not doing it for the right reason. You should stream as if 1,000 people are, because who knows? Tomorrow your stream might go viral and there might be 10,000 people watching it. Who knows? Nobody actually knows, right? Or there might be 0 people watching it. Or there might be one person watching it who sees something in you and they become a core member of your community, which is a huge, and there's some of them in the chat there. I'm not to, I don't want to derail it with the people in the chat, but Sideways Games, Peter McCann, Chris McCann, Damien McMullen, a lot of people who have been there from the start, through the thick and thin, and they're here right now, and that is kind of, it's pretty amazing, because they're the people who, they're the 1 viewer or the 2 viewers watching, and they're the people who, after a race, when you've had a crap race, they're the ones that message you and say, "Oh, that was really unlucky in the last corner."
Right.
Like, yeah, well, somebody
back up again.
somebody gets me, and somebody cares that this happened. And that kind of that was a huge motivator. And that's actually better than having 1,000 people watching. Not that I know what that feels like, but it's better than having 1,000 people watching who are emotionless about what you do, who don't care, who don't interact on the chat. The number itself is not as important as one person actually caring.
Right. I think it's an interesting world that we live in now, where it almost feels like, me as a viewer, you get to know the person that's streaming, even though they've never seen you in their life, but you kind of like know each other just through screen name or whatever. It's an interesting change to the way that we consume content, and it's pretty cool.
Definitely. And it's like, I'm so ingrained in my community that sometimes I forget that it's my community. Because I'll often, because the guys, they in my Discord, in the voice channels, you can stream what you're gaming, what you're doing and stuff. And I often go in there and I'm just watching them. And they're like, "Oh, it's so cool that you're this YouTuber and you're watching us."
Makes their day or whatever.
But I'm very much part of the community. The very same reason they're interested in what I'm doing is the same reason I'm interested in what they're doing. It's like, it just so happens that I got the ball rolling on this community, But I mean, not to give them any ideas, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, that community is going to keep going and keep growing. It definitely is, like, it's just one of those things, and that's kind of a nice part of the organic nature, and it's a great motivator for me because I don't have a huge amount of time to do my channel content and stuff, and it's nice to know that if I didn't upload a video for a couple of weeks, a lot of people won't notice, and because it keeps going at its own momentum, and yeah, I'm not really doing it for the numbers,
Yeah, and you said, I think it was, I don't remember if it was during the podcast or before the podcast when we were chit-chatting, but you said you only stream for about 2 hours and it's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's not a lot in comparison to a lot of these other people out there. Like,
yeah.
Tom, back in your days of streaming, and also I used to stream as well, we used to spend a lot more time than 2 hours on a Tuesday or Thursday doing it.
Yeah. Well, you were kind of everywhere you looked in all these, like, articles, 10 ways to build a stream community. The number one thing was you have to stream every day, as many hours as you possibly can. But like, looking back on it, I did it out of curiosity. It never kind of went anywhere. I actually did it alongside building Grid Finder and thought it would be kind of a natural progression before I realized that there was no USP for me driving. I'm not a particularly talented driver. I drive very normal things like Formula One, which isn't that interesting. Like, I was just doing it out of curiosity. But yeah, your story is kind of beautiful because it's, you had the community first. The community drove you to the content. The content then created the channel. And then it's grown organically. And like you say, right, you might not have the 1,000 viewers, but I guarantee that every stream you do, you'll always have that minimum number that means you're going to enjoy it because it's like your people, right? It's you and your people, and you're having a good time. And that's it. It's kind of pure community streaming. But here we go. Let's turn dark. The first time you did a hardware review, how did it happen and why? And how did it feel? Did you feel mucky?
So it was one of my I guess the things I was curious about, right? Because one of the beautiful things about, and you guys are doing it here with the podcast as well, right? It's I'm a big believer in making yourself scale. So if you do something, let's say you're helping someone and you do that on a one-to-one basis and you're answering the same questions over and over, you're spending another hour or another 2 hours answering the same thing. Whereas if you do a video, you can maybe cut out all the waffle, or make them able to pause it and stuff like that. Explain it in 5 minutes, and some people will actually do it in the 5 minutes. Other people, it'll take them 3 hours, but at least it's not your 3 hours, right? Kind of similar with a podcast like this. People can be listening to this in X amount of months' time, and it's those numbers kind of build up over time. And that's what a lot of even right now, there are lots of people watching my YouTube content, and I'm not doing it. I'm here drinking beer with the pleasure of talking to you guys, and it's the channel's working for me, So kind of from that point of view, I kind of figured, well, I'll try and do a hardware review because I know a lot about hardware. I've been using hardware for a long time, and I've replaced hardware, upgraded hardware, stuff like that. And I had a lot of hardware that I really, really liked. So I just wanted to do just experiment with it. So it was hardware that I already had. And then I did videos, and I sent those videos once they were uploaded and had like 12 views from my family and friends. I sent them to the hardware companies, and the hardware companies just started sharing them because there was a certain amount of, something that they saw in it. And then all of a sudden you go from 12 views to 300 views, which is insane. It's absolutely, monumental.
Yeah, you see the graph just.
Yeah, and it kind of gathered momentum like that. And then it got to the point where I tried to approach companies to try and get discounts on products. I was like, I'll put your name on the stream, stuff like that. And there was a lot of experimenting, kind of, finding my feet there. And as time went on, companies started contacting and saying, I like your reviews. Will you do a review of XYZ product? And they were sending me the products. And that's when I decided as well that I don't need these companies to sponsor me, or because let's call a spade, right? When you do a review on a product, you've got X amount of hours using it. You've got your experience, your value that you're bringing to the table. Before the video ever goes live, you're feeding back information to them, giving them product, suggested improvements, stuff like that. Then you've got your filming, your editing, all that, and it's very easy to dump 40 hours into a review. And if I spent, if I was, my own company and I had to depend on that money to put food on the table, that's not how I'd spend 40 hours. I value my time a lot more than that. This is just a hobby for me, But companies, a lot of them do see that you are putting in that much time and that much effort, and they appreciate that. And most companies, believe it or not, don't actually, they don't expect you to say, that their product is 100% perfect. Now, they wouldn't really like it if you completely slated their product, but generally, you talk about that stuff beforehand. And what I say, and it's one of my terms of review now, is if the product isn't good enough, I'm not reviewing it. I'm not wasting my time on it. If it doesn't work, or if I can't, if it's not compatible with stuff, or if it's broken, there's no point in me releasing a review, because I'm going to release a video saying how crap your product is, and it's a big waste of time for me. It's just I don't want to do that. Now people in my community will know that there's a problem with the product, and I'm not going to release a review on it. That in general will influence them most likely to not buy the product. But I think that's only fair. It's fair to tell them that, yeah, I have this product, but it's actually crap. So let's move on to the next one.
I really like your strategy in the way that you do your hardware reviews, because, well, you have a lot more patience than me, because I'm the type of person that is opening the package on the way in from the garage, like not waiting to set up cameras or anything. I'm like, oh, I got this new tech product. I got to open it right away. And then once I get it set up, I'm like, I should have recorded that probably.
Yeah. It gets so... Yeah, go on.
I love the way that so I watched the V&M pedals review today, and it looks like you just like, okay, you brought it in from the garage or wherever you happen to pick it up off the porch. You set it down, set up a camera, and just start going. And it made me laugh at that one point where you're like, oh, this side moves a little bit, this one doesn't. And you tried to move it, and you scratched your desk, and you're like, oh, well, I scratched my desk.
Yeah.
That's okay. And it just felt a little bit more organic than like the perfectly manicured product review video. And it gave it I don't know, it just feels a little bit more personal. The way that you show your reviews.
Yeah, for me it's very important to get the genuine nature of it across, And I'm not an invincible, like I'm not the best sim racer, and I'm not a product guru. I have a lot of experience with products and people. Firstly, I guess, a lot of people value my opinion on products because if and when they end up buying those products, they share the same values about it. So, like, nobody comes into my Discord or messages me and says, hey, this thing that you said about this product is completely untrue, because, I spend a lot of time with the products and all that kind of stuff. So there's a certain amount of reputation there. But you say about, the product sitting there and, being eager to open it up and stuff like that, it gets even deeper in my case because I stream on a Tuesday and on a Thursday. So if a box arrives on a Tuesday, I'm not going installing that on the rig because I've got a competitive race that night. So it's going to be on a Wednesday, but then I have 24 hours in which I also have a family, kids. I've got my 9-to-5 job. So the amount of time that I actually have to get up to speed with this hardware, plus I need to film my first impressions because they're all genuine first impressions. That's my main kind of difficulty with my content.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you had, let's say you had another 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week, in your schedule to make content, what would you spend it doing? Would you do more streaming or more reviews? More
reviews. Yeah. I would definitely, because I've a backlog of products that I want to review, right? That I've boxes sitting here that I haven't opened.
I wouldn't be able to do it. They'd already be opened.
They're coming in quicker than I can produce the videos, which is I appreciate the luck, the fortune of being in this position. And it's, when I went to try and, figure out the algorithm and earn €1, that this is not what I had in mind, and so there are products sitting there. What I would love to do if someone, said to me, what's your goal with the channel? What would you really love to do? I would love to at some stage be able to afford to work 1 day a week less at my day job and spend that day working at my content. That would be amazing. If it was a kind of a like for like thing, that would be amazing. I don't think I'd like to do it full time because I did the whole content creation. You're so dependent on these algorithms and people watching and stuff, like even stuff like during the summer, you guys will find with Grid Finder as well. You find the grid sizes drop and people just have other things on, and it just, for me, it wouldn't be reliable enough with my wife and kids and all that kind of stuff and bills that I have in my life. So
Right.
it'd be nice to have that balance. I'd love to have those, 8 to 10 hours on a Friday, where I can just really prep all my content for the next week, and then concentrate on my day job during the week, and then on that Friday just go gung ho again. That'd be nice, but we'll see.
Just add 10 more hours to your week somehow, and there you go. Just another
Easy.
day in there, right? So you mentioned something kind of in passing where you were talking about sponsorships, and before the show you were saying that you used to be sponsored by some hardware manufacturers, but you ended that relationship so that your content would seem more genuine. When you actually did get those hardware sponsorships, because anyone who's ever put a video on YouTube is like, what if I could get this for free? How did you go about doing that? Because now you say you have too many boxes to be able to keep up with the content.
Yeah. So it was originally it was kind of I don't know, is that an Irish thing or what? It's kind of, because I had nothing to lose, as long as I didn't, as long as I didn't degrade myself when contacting companies or overpromise anything. If I was very honest about, these are my numbers, and I could back stuff up with stats, even if those stats were low, things like your rate of growth and stuff were just very, very infectious, especially if people liked your content. So I reached out to a lot of companies, and a lot of companies just didn't even, or they rejected me straight away or whatever. And that's fine, that's the nature of it. Like when you're looking for a job, you're going to get loads of rejections, no matter how good you are. Doesn't matter, because they may not be looking, the timing may not suit or whatever. The first major one, and this was like, I was like, you know what, I'm going to send this company an email because this is like my dream product and blah, blah, blah. And I did this huge presentation with all the stats and stuff. And what I promised was very, very small. And it was kind of, I wasn't expecting anything from it. I got an email back about 2 or 3 days later, and it was Cube Controls and their flagship steering wheel, the CSX2, with the screen in it and stuff like that. They were
Beautiful
like,
wheel.
okay, we'll send you one. And it was like a 1-year sponsorship deal. And so they were sponsors on the channel, on all my liveries and stuff like that. And that was absolutely amazing. It was immense. And I was like, I went from feeling so incredibly lucky and fortunate to be considered by a company like that, which I was. I was over the moon. I was thrilled, to over time kind of being reluctant to release a review on the products, because I was like, I'm sponsored by these people. What are people going to think? No matter how, even if they 100% believe that I'm honest, which of course I believe and I'm going to say, but, can I really be, when I'm financially gaining from something, can I really be reviewing those products? So it was then after, and I extended, because COVID was happening and all that kind of stuff, I extended my sponsorship with Cube Controls, but then that was like about an extra 6 months. I gave them like an extra 6 months for free, because just stuff was, I was behind with reviews and stuff like that. And then after the 6 months, I messaged them because they wanted to discuss, renewing the contract and stuff like that. And I found myself in the space of like a year and a half, from being a hopeful, chancer sending an email, to being in a position where I was saying, look, it doesn't really matter what you offer to send me, I can't accept it, and I can't continue with this engagement because I don't feel it's honest towards my community and stuff like that. Yeah. And they accepted that, but it was such a huge shift of mindset, of I went from this kind of, almost, even though I was offering them value and stuff, I went from this mindset of how can I get free stuff to being more like a person who was saying, where's my real value? What's actually valuable here? And yeah, that was kind of a huge shift. Yeah. So now I'm not sponsored by any hardware companies. And if I do have hardware, it's all independently sent to me by either a reseller or the company themselves. And my full terms are actually on my website if anybody wants to see them. And if for any reason I don't want to do a review on the product, I have the right to refuse it.
You just send it back and say no, thank you.
Not even. So I never sell any of the hardware, right? So that's
Right.
one of my things, one of my terms. I never ever want to financially profit from a review, other than YouTube AdSense, people watching it, stuff like that, watching ads on my videos. But the product itself, I never resell that, because as soon as I get a €1,000 product and I sell that product after review, I've been paid €1,000 for a review.
Right,
That's just the way I see it. I can't do it any other way. Now, yes, I thought about just send it back to them, but what are they going to do with it? They're going to resell it, or they're going to give it away to one of their buddies or whatever. Where's my real value here? So I give away a lot of stuff on my channel. So a lot of stuff that I review, I give away. And you can probably see behind me even, there are lots of steering wheels and stuff like that. At the moment, I'm planning like an epic, kind of a charity auction where I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but as long as people can prove that they've made a certain donation to charity, they're going to get like a direct drive wheelbase or,
Nice.
hydraulic pedals or whatever,
That's pretty cool.
And that just engages the community more, and it gives real value for the thing. It goes to a charity somewhere, and I've got a job, my bills are paid.
There you
And
go.
your community must have reacted incredibly positively to that, right? Because I was going to ask a question earlier about like, how has your community reacted to you moving from racing to hardware reviews? But actually now I know that the full story of what actually happens with your hardware reviews. I can guess the answer.
Yeah, it's funny, right? So one of the things that I said to you guys as well is I don't do any viral content. So when I do these giveaways and stuff, they're often like completely on the down low, completely low key. And I've given away, I'd say in the last 2 years, I've given away probably close to 15 grand worth of stuff, just on the streams and stuff that's, not necessarily even review hardware, stuff that companies have, just sponsored and stuff. Because they really like they like the community, they kind of engage with the community. And call a spade, right? One of the things I have going for me is that I'm of a certain age. I have very limited time in a week to stream and stuff. So I'm one of the few streamers that people can consume all of my content, and it's not a big chore. So
Yeah. Okay.
a lot of those people are a similar demographic. They have kids, and they often have disposable money. Who likes people with disposable money? Companies. So a lot of these companies, they don't see that there are, only 30 people watching the stream or only 40 people watching a stream. They see people, there are 30 or 40 people like this guy who we know spends money on products. And when I do, even in the early days, when I did, first impressions videos or reviews, companies would message me and they would say, holy crap, we just got 10 orders today or whatever. How did you do that and whatever? And that kind of blew my mind. I didn't really realize that people were spending so much money, but they were. So that kind of followed the whole thing around as well. That's part of the success.
That's very, very interesting to kind of see inside that world.
It's kind of a
nuts.
world that so many people think they want to get into,
Right.
and for obvious reasons. But actually, having now spoken to more and more people who do it day to day, there is quite a lot to consider. It's not a case of, I get to go racing and people just give me free stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of like checks and balances to be made, right? But
Yeah.
where do you want this to go? Like, is this you just riding the wave, enjoying it, all's well, or is there some kind of goal?
Yeah, because I first started kind of really properly joining and contributing to online communities, on a very regular basis about 6 years ago. Before that, it was all kind of campaign mode type of I did some multiplayer, but it was like public lobby type of stuff. One of the reasons was because I was becoming a dad. My kid was about to be born, and I had to replace real life motorsport with sim racing to an extent. I was already sim racing, but I kind of had to it was more for my own mental health. often say to people in the community, I'm very, very happy with the way things are. If the channel doesn't grow for a year, nothing's going to change, right? If products stop being sent, nothing's going to change. It actually means that I'll have more free time. That'll be amazing. I'm not going to earn any more or less money as a result of that, which is also a really, really good thing. So I feel that I'm doing it for the right purposes, and the people in my community are benefiting from having time with each other and time with me. We're really more of a group of friends than this thing that's built around the channel. If the channel disappears tomorrow, we'll probably still all be on Discord tomorrow,
Right.
Well, it sounds like you've avoided the number one thing that I hear from most streamers, which is, you know what? If you sim race as a job, eventually there's going to be moments where you're just like, ugh, I can't be bothered to sim race tonight. And you fall out of love with sim racing. It sounds like with Tuesday and Thursday and the way that you decide what you are and aren't going to review, or when you are or aren't going to stream, and how you prioritize your community, it sounds a lot like you've completely avoided that issue.
Yeah, it has other benefits as well. Like, sometimes I'd be sitting in a Zoom meeting with people from work, and I'm like dazing off into the world. Something might be said that I'm not interested in, and I'm like, holy crap, that pedal had a bit of wobble in it. I'm like, that's was that loose? And then I'm like, I go and check. I'm like, if I had the time, I would have released a review, and I never would have been able to say that, because I would have been so in the moment of the product and it's great and stuff. You really get time to reflect and carefully plan what you're doing, which is an amazing benefit of not being able to go at it 100%. I get to sleep on all my decisions. Nobody expects it to be a day one video with all the bells and whistles, and if the video isn't there, it's not there.
Well, let's daydream for a minute here. What if your channel was to grow to the point where you had to pick left or right in the fork in the road, and you had to either go full-time content creation and get rid of your day job, or you kept it the way it is regardless of its growth? Which path do you think you would take on that?
So what would probably happen in that case? Let's say my channel was earning what my day job earns. Let's say money's not an issue here.
Yep.
What would probably happen is that I would replace my day job with other hobbies like real life cars, motorsports, stuff like that. Okay. And I would keep my pattern for sim racing, just because sim racing is my escape, right? I know that a lot of people watching this, and you guys as well, you don't have to think about being a father or someone who pays rent, or having to clean stuff. You don't think about any of that.
You're only thinking about driver.
You're only thinking about this very limited scope while you're there, while you're on track. And it is, no matter how, because sometimes I have races and I'm swearing and I'm like, oh my God, and my wife is like, are you okay? I was like, oh yeah, that was a great race. I really enjoyed that. Like, she's like, you sounded like you were miserable. I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, but it didn't really go my way, but in the end it turned out all right, and I'm like a new person after it. It's really, for me, it's an escape from, not that I have many problems in my life. I'm very, very fortunate, but getting a distraction and being able to just, be in a different world for a little while is pretty amazing.
It's interesting that you've called it an escape, or you've referred to it as an escape, because the track that you've chosen for us to race today is, and I've mentioned this, I think, in one of the last episodes of the podcast. I've said that sometimes sim racing for me is very competitive, and I'll practice and I'll practice and I'll practice and I'll work on the setup, and lights are about to go out and I'm nervous. I can't be the only sim racer that gets like an adrenaline rush before a race, right? Like that's a thing. However, sometimes I do use sim racing as a total escape. If I've just had a long day and I just want to relax, I always go on a Assetto Corsa, load up the Nordschleife, jump in a car, and then just do some laps. And I always, this is going to sound really cheesy, right? But I always set Seoul to like 6, 7 p.m. So like the sun is setting through the trees, in the carousel, it comes through, you get the rage. It's beautiful. And it's a great escape. And it's what I was about to say you chose, but actually your community has chosen to race the Nordschleife tonight. And I say race, we're not really racing. We're just going to have a track day, which is a really novel idea. Which I think, Chris, we should consider this as a default, because this is the pressure is off. We don't need to jump across now for a race start, because we can just jump in whenever we want.
It's interesting because we've on every single other episode we've done actual races, and then I'm firmly in the back, very, very strong, keeping that last place. But today, I was practicing before the podcast, and I'm sitting there, and the competitive part of my mind gets in there, and I'm like, I got to find the perfect car, perfect combination. I'm like, wait, no, I don't. I can sit in the BMW and just kind of cruise around the course while we have a little chat. This isn't a race situation.
Yeah,
and I think I'm gonna like it a lot. So I'm very appreciative of your community for picking the track day version instead of the whole race version, just because it'll be kind of relaxing and fabulous.
Well, although the community chose the track, you chose the cars, and it's an array of cars. I've driven about 6 or 7 of them today to try and work out which one I want, and I'm currently sat in the Lotus. I've reserved it. I'm very excited. But tell us how you chose your cars.
So yeah, a lot of these cars have significance for me. Firstly, I guess with Assetto Corsa, Kunos did a great job with a lot of these cars. Because there are so many mods, people tend to go straight to mods or cars that they're familiar with. So if you never watch GT1 racing, you're unlikely to pick a GT1 car. And one of the things that we tried to do over the years with organizing leagues was to try and make people enthusiastic about cars that they may not have ever driven before. And sometimes absolute gems arise from that, whether they're mods or Kunos content. Kunos content here is easy, I guess, for setting up. When you're setting up a community event, people don't have to do any downloads and stuff like that. As long as they have their DLC and stuff, then it's all good. But yeah, a lot of these cars are just excellent race cars. Some of them are a handful for sure. But stuff like the Scuderia Glickenhaus, the Praga R1, even the hybrids, they're a really fun car to drive. One of the things that Kunos struggled with in AC was the balance of classes of cars. So what we generally ended up doing was single make and model championships. But they were absolutely amazing, especially when people start contributing their own liveries and stuff like that. You get this colorful grid and people racing for 6, 8, 10, 12 rounds, weekly races, and really investing so much time in this car to the point where week in, week out, when we were doing tracks, do you remember the was it SRS, the world rankings? We used to check afterwards, fastest lap of the race, where would it have been? And often it would have been a number 1 time, just because we were spending so many hours, and stuff like that. That to me is the real, because I like, in the whole YouTube world and all that, you're very dependent on viral content and things being the trend. And I'm a firm believer in, I like, when you have a cup of tea, I like, that taste of, and that, the really silly, simple things that you don't really think about. I love those things. And if you can find that in a corner of sim racing that nobody else is looking at, it gives you an immense, like, I know a lot of people who, they go onto AMS2 and they just pick a random car, or Project Cars 2, or, some of these sims that people they're not the trendy sims.
Right.
But the amount of freedom and enjoyment that you can actually have in those is absolutely incredible. And I'm a huge fan of that. And a lot of these cars really represent that for me. I could have made this list twice as long.
Right, I bet. Well, I think it's probably time for us to do some laps. So if you're in the server and you're listening, we're just going to go for a tour around together. So we're going to try and stick together as a pack. And now most of the cars are fairly equal in performance, but then you've got like the BMW. Is it the M2 you put in there?
The M235.
Yeah, that's a little bit slow, but the rest we can probably all just about keep up. So we'll go around and we'll do some laps together. I'm going to have to do my transfer across.
The beauty at Nords is not necessarily being fast; it's keeping it on the track, right? So even if you get separated a little bit, getting that valid lap in is really all that matters.
I can see Chris sweating from here.
Yeah, I'm getting everything all set up for the race or the cruise. I keep thinking race, but yeah, I'm probably gonna drive the 919 hybrid. I think that's the one I feel the most comfortable in at this point. I've tried them all, which I'm very appreciative that you didn't make the list longer because I had to try every single one of them at least once. And yeah, I've settled on the 919. What are you gonna drive?
At the moment, I'm in the Praga R1, which is significantly slower. I might jump out and choose something else. What are you going in, Tom?
I'm going in the Lotus because so I tried I think 6 cars and then I stopped at the Lotus because it's got sass. Like
Okay,
when you can nail it down, it's fun, but it doesn't like to be nailed down, and I'm enjoying it.
okay. Let me go out and just choose something wild, and I'll be back in a second. The game.
What were you in? What were you in originally?
I was in the Praga R1.
Okay, nice.
But I'm gonna come back in something a bit crazy.
Well, okay, a little plug then while you're choosing a new car. Our previous guest 2 shows ago, Jem Hepworth, is a Praga driver. So get onto Spotify, Apple, and Google, go to our episodes lists, and listen to Jem talking about practicing in the Arden Sim in the Praga. It's very cool.
That was it was interesting to hear a race driver speak about a sim rig, but that level of sim rig, not the one we have in our living rooms, you know?
Yeah. So Flea McBaggins just asked, did I dab? I suppose I did dab. I was gesturing to my rig, so I need to move from desk to rig. So I'm going to go and make that transition now. And then I'll see you on the track.
So Lawrence, do you wear gloves while you race?
I do usually, but again, 'cause my preference is wearing gloves and wearing boots. Yep. That's just my preference. But because I review hardware, I realize not everybody uses gloves, not everybody uses boots. So I often switch between. So right now I'm not wearing gloves and I'm not wearing shoes. So I'm testing out a set of pedals right now. I know everything about the steering wheel, and it's not too serious. I'm in a weird position. I say I would never say it publicly, but this is pretty public, right? Gloves give me that extra little bit of confidence that make me feel a little bit faster. Which is the opposite of what I would have said before I had gloves.
Okay. I wear gloves as well, but I made I guess it's not really a mistake. I bought all of the Alcantara surfaced wheels, so I have the BMW Fanatec and then the Fanatec F1 wheel. And I can't get a good grip of them without gloves, so I always have to wear gloves. And then I'm not a sock player either. I like to wear boots as well.
Yeah.
What is going on in the pits right now? Everyone's going nuts. Oops, someone got in the Beamer.
I said I'd create a bit of a soundtrack, so I'm in the Mazda 787B.
Nice. Oh, there's 2 Beamers here. Okay. I tried to drive that, and Tom, I believe you were right behind me on the track when I tried to drive that.
I really enjoyed that process because I was like, oh, he's trying the Beamer. That's good. It's going to be slow. It'll be fun. It'll be a little bit different. And you literally got to the first corner, went straight on, and then left the serve. And I was like, oh, I guess that didn't work.
Yeah, I was, because I was used to driving all these hybrids and everything. And when I got in that, I had the pedal to the metal all the way into the corner, right? And then, my braking distance was a little off just because of what I'd been driving, and straight into the wall.
Yeah, it looked unpleasant. So, what have I missed? Where is Lawrence? Is Lawrence?
I'm just behind you, Tom. I'm in the orange car.
Oh, okay. Right.
I'm doing a little bit of like a formation style lap.
Are we? Okay.
You're in the Mazda?
Yes.
You're in the Mazda? Oh, okay. I have you down as broadcasting 3.
Oh, really?
on my relative. Oh, there we go. No, gotcha. So everybody.
Here's the crew.
Right. Go on. You go.
Yes.
You go first. We'll all follow you. There we go.
I got a little bit of a head start because I guarantee you guys will catch me.
I'm not going to go full gung-ho. We'll keep it together for a little while.
The the sun is setting, Tom. So you got your nice sunset drive.
This is beautiful through the trees.
Have I even got headlights on this thing?
Have you got them mapped? Have you got them mapped?
I've got them mapped, yeah.
Okay, this car felt ridiculously fast earlier, but now I'm next to you guys. It all of a sudden feels very slow.
I'll back the pack up a little bit here.
I'm going to play Alonso and just block all of you.
What are you in, Chris?
This is beautiful. We should get some screenshots of this.
Of the 919, yeah. So you're just behind me, are you?
No, I'm ahead of you guys.
Okay.
Oh, this is fun.
Let's go catch him.
See how long I can actually stay
Oh, the sparks are flying from the Mazda. That Mazda that you're in always reminds me of Gran Turismo. I'm sure it was one of the best cars you get in Gran Turismo 2 specifically.
That was probably... Gran Turismo was one of the first games I took seriously in sim racing. Everything else was just kind of fun arcade mode mindset.
Yeah, you really had to work for your license. I think it was the license system that made you take it seriously, right? Getting your B license, and you had to do those silly braking games.
Right. Those license tests were fun. Sometimes
they were amazing.
iRacing was more like a license test rather than you having to progress through, but...
Exactly.
Oh, this car is so much fun.
It looks amazing. Here, you go in front of me for a while, Tom. I want to see that car dance.
Oh, it does dance. It does dance. Especially through these really fast sections. But you've got to be really generous with the blips on the downshifts.
We've got someone in a Huracan Super Trofeo who's right up behind us. We should be able to completely blitz that car.
Yeah. The thing is, this car is fast, but it doesn't inspire confidence.
Oh, I see a yellow flag. Is that you, Chris?
That was me. I'm back.
Have you mapped your turbo adjustment, Tom?
I should have it.
Because you're in the Lotus, I think by default it's at 60%.
Yes, I can see that on the dash, the LCD dash.
Ooh, diff lock.
Have you finally mapped your keys, Tom? Because I know for the longest time you just never mapped anything on AC.
No, I have not. Oh! God, you put your foot down in here and the back end just goes. Ooh, but it's kind of fun. Oh, this Super Trofeo is right in front of me. You've got to be so careful on the upshifts.
Yeah, be careful going up that hill as well.
I don't think I've put my foot to the floor yet. There we go. I love the flames coming out the back of this Lamborghini. Oh, who are we catching up with here? Oh, Dadabayo. Dadabayo is a Grid Finder sim racing team driver. He races in our iRacing team. No wonder he's so fast. I didn't notice the name. Welcome. This is beautiful. Just driving around a track together.
Oh, nearly lost it there.
You guys are coming up. I see you back there. Well, on the map.
Don't have the aero of these LMP ones. Oh, that's the wall.
You might notice that I generously turn damage off for this server.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Straight through the carousel. I've never managed to get that right.
So what wheel and base are you running right now, Lawrence?
Right now I have the Camus direct drive steering wheel, as I'm facing the wrong way. It's decent. Yeah, I've had some quality control. Oh, I'm stuck. No. Oh, I'm not stuck anymore. I've had some quality control issues with it. So this is one of those examples where, you get a piece of hardware, you work with the company to feedback stuff. So they've already made a lot of improvements, so much so that they actually sent me a new review unit with some improvements incorporated. But with the first one, I had a failure where the steering wheel wasn't getting power. So they solved that. But on the second one, the steering wheel, 2 of the buttons have failed, or you have to press them really, really hard in order to activate them, which isn't ideal. So I've given them a chance to, obviously I can only go by their word that that's the way they would treat every customer, that they would just send them new hardware. But I'll say all that on my review, that I don't know if that is the case, because I'm not an average consumer. But other than that, when stuff works, it's great, really good. The wheelbase itself, if you're just buying the wheelbase, it's actually really good, and I'd highly recommend that. But if you're buying the steering wheel as well, just beware that I've had some quality control issues. As for pedals, I'm using the VNM pedals. That's a company based in Vietnam.
Yeah, I watched your review on those, or your unboxing of those.
Yeah.
They look like they're built like tanks.
Yeah, they're super impressive looking. And steering wheel, I'm using a Cube Controls GTX steering wheel, which is like one of those fancy GT steering wheels with a screen in it and stuff. So that's... I look at it quite a lot because I generally have something different on my screen there than I would in my HUD. But in general, is it worth the extra money over one without a screen? Probably not. Not unless you're in a very reclined driving position where you don't necessarily have to look down. Now, the GTX is kind of different because the screen is quite raised up. So the screen is actually very close to what you'd see on your dash. Like what people see on the view right now from my in-car, it would be very, very similar to that. So similar height, Let me grab a new car and I'll go with the same car again. I'll try push it a bit harder this time.
Just taking out 120 litres of fuel extra that I didn't need.
Oh yeah, I don't think fuel is going to make the difference for me, but...
Right.
Tom,
this is so much fun.
Ran out of gas on one of the races recently.
Oh yeah, and I blew up
Sim Sunday's race.
And I blew up my engine on one of them. 2 of them, in fact, didn't I? Was it not Danny Juicer? I blew up my engine, and he then had to bump draft me round.
Was it that one?
Are you guys ready to go again?
Are you here, Chris? Are you at the start?
Nope, but I can get there.
Okay, we'll wait for Chris.
Yeah, we'll wait.
Back to pits.
Oh, I do have headlights.
I'm here now.
We're just over the top. There's a rolling start going on ahead of us.
Hold on,
Do a few burnouts for the stream.
The parking lot here.
Beautiful. All I can see is Gran Turismo 2.
Lawrence, how many wheel and base combinations do you think you've actually raced with at this point in your career?
It must be approaching 15 wheelbases.
Wow.
Pedal sets probably about 9 or 10.
Do any of them stick out? Like really stick out?
Yeah, they're like a lot of them have their own merit and the things that they're really good at. People say SimiCube is like the Rolls Royce, As far as I'm concerned, the SimiCube SC2 Pro is the pinnacle of force feedback. If anybody really just cares about force feedback, that's the wheel that I recommend to them. It's amazing. Now it has other things that I'm not too fond of, like the quick release and that. I'm not a huge fan of it, but software-wise and force feedback-wise, it's incredible.
My brakes don't work as well as theirs.
Oh, Chris. I thought this was going to be my first incident-free Sim Sundays.
Oh, that was you?
That was me?
Yes. At least it was you. I don't feel so bad now. Sorry, Tom. So where would you put... I have the Fanatec DD1. I don't know. Back in the day when I was racing on a G25 and then a G27, Fanatec was like my... I finally got it. Wheelbase and wheel, right? Where would you put that in the line of all the different ones that you've tried?
So that's an interesting question because I've never reviewed the DD1. I've used it. I've used it a lot, and I think it's a good wheelbase. But unless I use hardware in exactly the same way, I refuse to compare it. So it hasn't gone through my review process. So okay. I don't know. Like I've never played with the settings on a DD1 other than what you can do through the screen. But I've never installed the software. I've never actually installed one on a rig, and all that kind of stuff for me is very important as a consumer.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of surprising that you haven't done one of the Fanatec's, though. To be honest with you.
Yeah, it's funny. I never kind of I never approached them. I've done some Fanatec reviews, like the handbrake and shifter and stuff, but never wheelbase. No, I kind of went the Logitech to Thrustmaster to direct drive route.
Okay.
Which Thrustmaster did you have?
I had a TSPC Racer.
Yeah, that's the same one that I had.
Oh, who's that?
That's me.
Is that you again?
I had the curves.
Tom's reverting to his old style. I'll just turn around and ram everyone.
This is Taka 2. I'll catch you. Yeah, this car is great, but if there's one thing it doesn't like, it's curbs. Especially the Nordschleife
these
curbs.
Giant ones? Yeah.
Oh, I'm already here. Look at this lovely little pack of cars.
Yeah, the guys up front are doing a great job of, even though they're drag racing each other as well, they're doing a great job of backing up the pack.
I love these LMPs. They just look so mean.
Yeah, so we did a lot of multi-class racing, and one of the scariest things that you can subject an inexperienced driver to.
Did everybody just do the same thing? I just saw somebody go and slammed on the brakes.
Those curves are brutal, man.
I saw the LMP coming, so I went to the right, and then I got punted by you, Tom.
Oh man.
Oh, we've got another Formula car. Formula cars are together again.
Yeah, one of the scariest things you can say to somebody who's not that confident on track is go and race multi-class. But that's exactly what, one of the things that I suggest in leagues where people are trying to learn, because it's fine. Like, we spoke earlier about, starting from the pits and not being passed out or not being under pressure or whatever. That's all well and good, but you still don't know how to act when you're under pressure. You might have a better race, but you're missing a valuable skill. And one of the things you get with multi-class racing is you get cars that are just constantly passing you. You always have to be aware that you're a lot faster, and you're a lot slower in general. The slower cars are occupied by the inexperienced drivers, but you're a lot slower than people that you're not expected to be faster than. So it gives you a certain amount of breathing room, a certain amount of space, but you also get valuable technical skills on track of being overtaken all the time.
Well, Lawrence, if there's one thing I have not got a shortage of experience in, it's getting overtaken. He's up.
It just locks up there.
This is my favourite corner. The sun coming through the trees here with Sol is just magical.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm going up the top here. Look at this. Look at this. This is beautiful.
The screenshot.
Yeah, we need a screenshot of that.
So, Lawrence, when you switched from kind of, I guess we'll call them amateur pedal sets to really, really nice ones, did you see a giant improvement on your track times?
Yeah, well, initially when you switch to load cell, you're going to be a bit slower because you're so used to the brake feeling quite different. But yeah, after a while, it's mainly your consistency. I wouldn't say that my fastest laps improved, but your consistency definitely improves. And one thing that I like to do, especially when I'm reviewing more entry-level hardware, is because when I use hardware, when I review hardware, I use it as if it's my only hardware, so I get the proper authentic experience. But that also means that all of my competitive league races, absolutely everything that I do that I really care about, I'm using that hardware. So that means that when like for example, last year sometime, I switched from a 15 Newton meter direct drive wheelbase to a Logitech G923 for a month and a half.
that must be crazy different.
Quite a journey.
Yeah, and that meant switching to the pedals as well. So I switched from my load cell pedals to the Logitech pedals. And it's only when you really have to depend on the hardware so much that you spend the effort, you put in the effort tweaking it, seeing the benefits, seeing where it has advantages, and just using that hardware to its full capacity. And that's one of the reasons that review was a massive success, because I have a lot of perspective from a lot of other hardware, and I really got to see the best of what the Logitech has to offer. I mean, we all know it is what it is, but it has a lot to offer.
I raced with the 927 and 925, or G25 and the 927. I forget what their numbering.
Yeah, the G29 or G27.
Well, so I had the G25 back in the day, and then before I got my Fanatec, I was running the most recent version that was for PlayStation and PC, not Xbox and PC. So I think it's the 27, or I don't know. And I really like that wheel. The only thing that really bugged me about that wheel that I constantly tell people is in the very center, there was like this gap where there was no feedback whatsoever.
Yeah.
So when you were trying to go in a straight line, like there was no feedback no matter what.
Yeah.
So you just had this gap where you're like, I don't know, we're just ghost riding the car for a little while.
Yeah. No, I completely, that happens. And stuff like that, you need to kind of, you need to tweak your settings and try and get it, as good as you can get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great wheel. And for the price, I mean, getting the entire setup for what, $250 or $200 at times on sale?
Yeah.
I mean...
Oh, it's crazy. Like, I mean, putting it into perspective, what I have... the steering wheel alone that I'm using right now is worth more than my entire rig was probably about 4 years ago, excluding the PC.
That's another thing. As a sim racer, you constantly have like gear envy. It's almost no matter what level of gear that you're sitting in, you're like, what if I got this one extra thing or this little upgrade to the wheel? It's just constant battle.
Yeah, no sim racer has ever finished their rig.
Yeah, so I have a very strong theory on this, and that is that we actually have two hobbies. One is racing, and one is collecting hardware. The two don't really have. Obviously, if you don't race, there's no real point in having the hardware. But the hardware doesn't have as big an impact as you would think it does on your actual racing. So. And if you could see at the end of a race all the people who beat you with inferior hardware, it would probably make you feel a lot less good about yourself.
You're like, I spent how much and I still got last? What?
Yeah. Exactly.
I've always wanted to do, get a Mario Kart emulator from, Nintendo 64, but play it on a sim rig. You're just driving Mario Kart in a sim rig unnecessarily.
I wonder what the force feedback would be like if you're driving, say, Yoshi versus Bowser.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Would you feel the weight of the character? That'd be funny. Someone's probably modded it so that it does work like that.
They haven't. Next project.
Right.
So you guys have gone out, yeah?
Oh, have you?
Oh, I'm in the pits, but I'm in F2004. So I'll catch you guys in no time.
If you're at the front there, Chris, back everybody. Oh, you just did. Back everybody up.
Yeah, I heard that you wanted to catch up, so I started to make a roadblock.
Yeah, I saw that.
That was on purpose. I was just trying to get everyone grouped together again.
Yep. I'll wait. Oh, I see you catching.
This 10-point turn is not fun in this section of the track, but there we go.
I also found it quite tough to even get out of the car park in this car.
Yeah, with the Formula cars, they don't have the turning radius needed to make some of the corners.
Right. 12 seconds behind. The F2004 around this track is going to be
It's amazing. If you ever want to feel like a superhero, do it.
We'll let's make this our last lap, and then we can go and do the Q&A, because there's a lot of questions that people have asked in the chat, and I said
have you been
go through
reporting them down, by the way?
I have not, but I will scroll.
Whoa.
Wow.
That was hot.
This thing is an animal.
That sounds so great, just the high-pitched
so
whine
good,
of it.
I'm just going to keep doing that. You guys are going to pass me, and I'm just going to pass you out again. This thing is ridiculous.
It's one of my favorite cars to, like, if I'm just in an unranked lobby on a set Corsa and I want to do, like, I don't know, Monza or Mugello, just something, if I've only got, like, half an hour, that's my favorite.
Oh, my brakes are good.
I think we need a serious inquiry.
I'm not gonna point fingers, but that definitely wasn't me.
I was in front. Oh wow! Look at that speed. This car feels like it's on the edge of speed, but it's clearly not when you drive next to the 2004. Oh wow!
We did a open lobby in that car, right, Tom?
We did.
Remembering.
We kind of did that for a little while, actually. We got pretty good at it. I mean, that around Spa, kind of iconic.
That's what it was. Yep, I remember.
Oh! I'm really glad that I decided to take damage off of this server. I don't think it would have the same feeling.
It would have just been back to pits for everyone.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Chris, I think maybe track days as the default for the podcast.
I definitely like it. It's got a different feel to it.
Takes the pressure off. And there's no pressure.
Another thing you could do is a hot lap competition at a track.
Yeah, so it doesn't... It's the point of, like... Because, we say that we'll chat for like 45 minutes and then jump into the server. So I've been planning it so that the, qualifying is at like 50 minutes into it. So you're kind of bound by those timings. But if you're having a really good chat, you don't necessarily want to be like, oh, I'm sorry about, can I just interrupt your really interesting story because we really need to go and do qualifying.
Yeah, and then you'll be like, we'll get back to that, and you never get back to it.
No. I think we all went off there. No one is going to catch up. It's 2004 now.
So, Lawrence, based on what you've actually used, it doesn't necessarily have to be what you've reviewed, but just what you've used. What do you think your perfect combination would be? Wheel, base, pedals, and you can even throw shifter in there if you want to.
Oh, it's a very tough question. And it comes with great responsibility saying like stuff like that because that doesn't, automatically just mean that everything else is crap, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I absolutely love the Simagic Alpha wheelbase. For me, it's a very easy to configure wheelbase. It's got a ton of power. Like, it's not far off the SimiCube SC2 Pro. It's missing a little bit of definition, some of the road texture, stuff like that compared to the SimiCube. But it's got a glorious quick release. It's got better steering wheel selection, stuff like that. So that would definitely be my wheelbase of choice. Pedals. Right now, my number one in the market pedals is the Acetec Forte. I think it's own, like, 2-pedal set is €499 or $499. So it's not a top end pricing set of pedals, including the clutch. It's cheaper than the Hosenfeld Sprints. and it's definitely a competitor for them. I prefer them to the sprints, so I think they're the best value pedals on the market right now.
Acertec seem to have come out of seemingly nowhere, right?
Yeah, like they've got all the benefits that they have an existing, they make cooling products for.
Yes.
So they know everything about the supply chain, customer service, all that kind of stuff, and they're all petrol heads, so it kind of made sense,
We actually have the CEO and founder of Aztec coming on the podcast in, I think it's next month or the month after.
Cool.
So I'll message you for some interesting technical questions.
Oh, you have to ask him about the whole short break travel thing.
Right.
that causes controversy.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of these products, more people kind of think that more is better. So direct drive, more Newton meters is better. Brake pedal, more kilos of pressure is better. But though, right, this is going to sound like a really odd comparison, but obviously we race in the Enduro car series, the 4KAs, and I remember, so I have a set of TLCMs that I'm using now, and my brake pedal is set up to like max out the brake pedal weight, so it's like 120 kilos, right? Because I've modded it, so it's 120 kilos on the brake pedal, because that's what I'd led to believe from all these sim racing forums, that's what a racing brake pedal feels like. Then you get in the 4K, not that a 4KA is like your typical race car, I get that, but you get into the 4KA, which does have like race brakes on it, and it's just the lightest thing ever. I come onto my sim and I'm like, oh god, why is this so heavy?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, right? So we're and it's an interesting. You could do a podcast on it in its own right, but we're in the real world, right? Real motorsport. You have limitations on your hardware, which because they're directly connected to your actual car, right? Whereas here, I'm using the same hardware, even if it's a couple of €100 setup compared to a €100,000 setup. What the game receives, it doesn't know what's controlling it. It doesn't know. It doesn't have. It doesn't care. It's completely agnostic of how your ego is about your hardware. So that is one of the beautiful things of sim racing, but it also brings to light a very philosophical debate that, well, if real life motorsport didn't exist, because we're trying to replicate real life motorsport, right? But the things that we should really be focusing on, and this alludes to what you were saying, Tom, is what makes us the fastest we can possibly be.
Right.
And if racing, in a gaming sense, even if it was, vehicles with engines and wheels, would we still use a steering wheel? Would we still use 3 pedals or 2 pedals or whatever? Would we use a silly little shifter or paddles on the back? How would it actually evolve if it wasn't limited by the real world restrictions? Because we're obviously trying to mimic that, but how would it grow organically if the real world thing didn't exist?
Right, this kind of like relentless pursuit of simulation versus performance. So this is actually a question that I asked Jem, because I pointed out that when she gets in a race car, like she has a different brake feeling on every car that she gets into, right? So when she gets in, she has to get used to that muscle memory. Whereas in sim racing, you have this really weird sensation of your brake is going to feel the same every single time, and yet you could be in different cars, different tracks, which should really feel different, but they're not going to feel different. They're going to feel the same, but they are going to react differently because you're in different cars. And I asked her how Arden managed to simulate the actual brake pressure and brake throw of the car that she's actually in when she goes into the simulator. But it is interesting that whole, in a race car, you set up the race car for the track. In sim racing, you set up the race car for the track, but also the sim rig for the car, the track, and the fourth dimension of sim racing, if you like, the game. Because each game probably has optimal settings, right? So it's a whole extra layer of complexity.
Yeah, and this is like when we compare the real world to simulation and stuff. This is one of the things that I love thinking about it, right? And I love talking about it. But one thing, and I often try to express it, but it was only I was at the Sim Racing Expo. I was doing the ADAC GT500 race. So I was on a team and I was against esports professionals, and I was watching them practice, and they had their individual setups where there wasn't, there were some setups there where there was just a person with screens, like at the pit wall in, F1 or GT racing.
Yeah,
and it was someone just analyzing the graphs. And I was listening to what they were saying. And that's when all of a sudden I realized not only does this person have a purpose like in real life, so they're not just pretending, they're not just, putting on a uniform to look official. They were saying things like, you have an extra 6 inches in that corner that you could use before track limits. And I was like, oh my God, you don't get that in real life. Okay, you get pushed to track limits more, but eventually someone's going to say, oh, they keep doing that, let's punish them. Whereas in a simulator, it's a binary thing.
There's no subjectivity, right?
Yeah, it's either track limits or it's not. And if you can teach yourself to be as close to those track limits as possible every single time, you don't even, like I said earlier, less things to think about. If you're already automatically going there, your corner becomes easier. You open up that corner, you can get on the throttle earlier or whatever. These are the things that people are thinking about and the things that people have access to in simulation that we may not have in real life. And that kind of blows my mind that it could actually become a lot more complicated in ways than real life racing.
Yeah, I had the most incredibly eye-opening conversation last week. And again, this is a little bit of a plug for our next episode with Alpine. But their head of esports who runs their team, and he was telling me how they have developed eyewear for each individual driver based on the screen and the time of day. So they have like eyewear to stop like fatigue for the drivers for like racing during a day, but then a different set for driving during the night. But I mean, I'm not going to give too many spoilers away. You got to go listen to it. But it's all about like the effort that they put into training their esports drivers. Are we talking like neural tracking? So we're talking like the sensors on the brain and stuff while they're racing, and they put up these little things on the screen to make sure that they're constantly aware, and they track it through these neural trackers to train their drivers. It's the same. Okay, maybe not the same, but it's not far off the amount of effort they put into their actual racing drivers, the amount of prep they put them through for these competitions. Now, I'm really conscious of the time because we are now over time already by 2 minutes. So, but we did say we're going to do a Q&A. So we're going to need 1 to 5 word answers, quick fire, rapid questions from the chat. Chris, if you jump in the Discord, I'll jump on the YouTube, and together we will tag team this. So, Lawrence, this is from EGT Canada. Are there any reviews that have not made it out into the public? If so, why?
Yes, the Camus one that I mentioned, and there's some other ones. The IMB Source hardware, so they've got 2 direct drive wheelbases. They're being held back because the firmware is no good. There's a software. I'm waiting for a new software version for a seat mover that I use as well. So there's plenty of hardware. And if anybody's interested, there's a channel in my Discord where I show exactly at which stage each of my reviews is at, and the ones that are blocked and why they're blocked. So that's completely transparent. It's like a little image that I post every week or 2.
Okay, Chris.
I am sifting through just arbitrary conversation first, so you go again.
Oh, okay. Well, we've got from Flea McBaggins, what's better, ACC or iRacing?
Oh, geez, that's loaded. I think that the people who this is a very diplomatic answer, right? But it's genuinely how I feel. The people who are extremely passionate about why they love their Sims so much are all right. They're right in their own right. They are very, very good at pointing out the flaws of the other Sims, while the people who love like iRacing don't concentrate on the flaws, or they try to justify the flaws. Same with ACC and all that. Yeah. So nobody's wrong, and I'm glad that I've spent enough time in both to be able to see that.
Nice. Chris?
Well, this one is from Mark Raddenberry on Discord, and it says, is LFM going to be the way for ACC to appeal to the iRacing masses? Or, like me, do you think they still have a way to go, especially with the limitations ACC has for who's at fault in a crash?
In 5 words.
Yeah, they definitely that type of system is the way to go forward. And I think that at some stage, if Kunos don't roll something out like that themselves, we could see an acquisition of LFM or something like that.
When are you getting a beer sponsor?
I've tried. I've reached out to places, but they just think that I'm some Irish, person who just wants to drink on stream. So you know what? The people who pay monthly to my channel, so the community members who are on the various memberships and stuff, they give me more than enough money to afford a nice beer.
Nice. All right.
And then you're not stuck with like one just because they're sponsoring you. That would be unfortunate as well.
It would have to be like a distributor or an online retailer of like hundreds of types of beer.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm not interested if you're listening.
Yeah, CEO of Heineken, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
saying.
Heineken owns a lot of beers, so you slip into my DMs there, Mr. Heineken.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. It's been fun, as I expected it would be. We will see you at the Sim Racing Expo this year, which is very exciting. Thanks to everyone that joined us both in the chat and on the track. It was chaos. It was a very expensive few laps on the Nordschleife. There'd be a few invoices knocking around now for parts.
I think I only hit 3 people, and each one of you.
No, you hit everything 3 times. Can I say one last thing? Right, my community's amazing.
Anything
As you guys can see in the chat and all that, we've had some crazy stuff happen. Lots of great stuff for charity, mental health, people going through stuff in their own life. It's an amazing support group. You know, first and foremost, so much so people have gotten tattoos with like Potato Nation on the tattoo. Like people take this. I'm 100% serious. People take this very, very seriously, and I don't, underplay. My responsibilities in that. But yeah, the people are absolutely amazing, and I just, I want to thank them because, it takes more than one person to make a community.
Well said.
Well said, sir.
Is there anything you want to announce? Upcoming streams, upcoming videos, or socials, anything like that before we depart?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, go on.
I thought you were asking me.
Not you, Tom.
I was like, yes, I've got an Assetto Corsa event next week. Sign up.
I would say hop into my Discord, discord.gg/Potato Nation. Get in there and you'll find everything you're looking for.
Very, very cool. Lawrence, we really appreciate you being here.
Damien McCullen is desperate. He's messaged in both the Discord and the YouTube now. Ask him about the PN tattoo, please lol.
So Damien is one of he got a Potato Nation tattoo on his wrist, and I know it's very close to his heart, and he's very close to our heart as well, and we've helped each other through a lot of rough times. So pretty much every night, like every evening, and throughout the day, a lot of people just hang out in the Discord, and awesome. they're just chatting, even while they're working. Like, so they're just doing their job and they're just on Discord. So we have people who come in and live stream. They might be welding on a car, or they might be, cool. Designing or doing spreadsheets or whatever. And they're just in chatting as if it's an office environment. It's an amazing, crazy place.
That does sound interesting. Especially like the welding and things like that. That would be kind of like the progress video watcher in me would love that, because I just be staring at it and it would distract me from work. But
yeah, well, that's part of it, part of the fun of it as well, right?
Right. Lawrence, we really appreciate you once again. This was an awesome episode, and do you have one single question for the next guest?
Ooh, that's a good one. All right. Well, firstly, thank you guys. I think what you're doing is class, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. And you've got a great guest list and stuff coming up. One
you need
question.
To know who the next guest is, right?
Yeah, it could be a generic one.
It could help.
Who is the next one?
The reason I'm panicking is because I really want to pronounce his name right, but you've met him. Aristos. I'm gonna have to get this right before the next episode. Aristolis from Kunos, the guy who literally designed the physics for Assetto Corsa.
Okay, ask him. Do you think that Assetto Corsa Content Manager has set the bar unrealistically high for what you can achieve with AC2?
Ooh, that's a great
question.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Okay, Lawrence. Well, that's going to wrap this episode. Everyone in chat and also through Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Any other episodes you want to see, you can go there to get them. Also, follow GridFinder on socials. We're GridFinder TV on YouTube, Grid_Finder on Instagram, and just GridFinder everywhere else. Tom, any last words?
No, thank you very much for joining us in the server. It's been really good fun. Just driving around, even not competitively, together, just as that big group around the track. That was beautiful. We should do that more often.
That was fabulous. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to participate in the AC Invitational that is coming up next weekend, make sure you join the GridFinder Discord and sign up for that. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for being here.
Bye.